Good evening, all you Zinners saved by grace. This is Daniel Lewis Crumpton, and I'm broadcasting from the 8th Congressional District of Georgia from the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. Tonight I'm going to be joined in the passenger seat by the hardest working man in radio, Chuck Ochelli. Chuck, are you with us? We don't have Chuck yet. Chuck is going to be joining us very shortly, and we're going to have a very special guest tonight, Derrick Grayson, who's running for Senate here in Georgia, and it doesn't really matter if you happen to reside in Georgia or not. People who are in the, quote, liberty or freedom movement, if you find a candidate in any state or municipality that's running for office that voices the cause of freedom and liberty, it's my belief that you should put all your effort behind that person, so that we all have a voice in the Senate and in Congress. You know, it doesn't matter if you're political or apolitical. Wherever you can help, please help. So we have Chuck with us. Is that right?
Yes, sir. How you doing this evening?
The hardest working man in radio. How you doing, Chuck?
Well, you know, the joke on social media real quick and private messages was, what are you, Mr. AFR now? Well, kind of.
Yeah.
5 days a week, and then a drop in with Daniel. I promise you guys I will not be in the passenger seat every Saturday on Zen in the Car Radio, but I had to come on the first, the maiden voyage, if you will, and absolutely had to join you today because I wanted a chance to talk to Mr. Grayson, actually.
Yeah, no doubt. And well, of course, yeah, you're not always going to be in the passenger seat, and I do appreciate you for coming on. I needed somebody. I'm a writer by nature. You know, I came out of my mother's womb with a pen in my hand. So this is something new for me. This is your territory. And I was like, Chuck, could you hold my hand and walk me through this? But Chuck Ochelli is from the Ochelli Effect. He also does Ochelli in the Greek. And you want to go ahead and give those times out so people can drop in and listen to what you guys have to say?
Oh, sure. And what they call the Eastern Time Zone there in the formerly United States of corporate America, yeah, that would be 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. You can catch me doing my regular thing. Ochelli in the Greek is the Friday night show. All the other days of the week are different, and you never know quite what you're going to get, sort of like Forrest Gump's box of chocolates on the Ochelli Effect on American Freedom Radio. So there you go.
Yeah. You kind of have the moniker of the blind JFK researcher, but I assure you that whenever you tune into the Ochelli Effect or Ochelli in the Greek, you're not just going to get JFK stuff, though you do extensively. And one night, me and you are actually going to have to do that because it's a field of study that I find fascinating. But there's a lot on your show, and I do want to go ahead and plug that you have a website, Ochelli.com, and anyone who is a fan of alternative media, who wants to support alternative media, I urge you and passionately exhort you to go to Ochelli.com now. And Chuck, tell people what they're going to find on Ochelli.com.
Well, let's see what we have thus far. It is still in development, so there is much more to come. But as of now, there is a free video section. There is a free MP3 section. There is let's see now. There's a few things about the show and the evolution of it and things like that. There's also a membership section where people can sign up for a couple dollars a month and get content which is not available on the show currently. Some of the content that ends up on there because it's part of sets are part of current things and all that, but different guest appearances I've done over different issues, different people of interest that I've interviewed over the years that are not available on regular archives anymore, and stuff that was never aired and never intended to air that I put over there, which are discussions with fascinating characters of all sorts. For instance, there's a completely uncut interview with Lee Harvey Oswald's best friend in Russia at the time when he defected to Russia, which I found fascinating, and some other people did too. And then there's an exclusive Ochelli in the Greek show over there, which has never aired on the concept on the reality of water, which again, just like the Ochelli in the Greek show, is stuff you don't hear elsewhere. So that's the kind of thing you find in the member section. And, hey, I don't want to talk about me, Daniel, but I do thank you for, for giving me the chance to tell people what's over there right now. And there's more to come, people. So,
yeah, this site got launched the 23rd of November.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it's still in development, and I know you're not going to do it, so I'll go ahead and do it. Guys, we do not get paid for what we do here. We do what we do out of the passion from our hearts and our belief that we're making a difference. So if you do go to Ochelli.com, there is a donate button. Please, if you're going to have a Starbucks this week, can you go without one Starbucks and hit that donate button to support alternative media? Because if it's not for, if it wasn't for your donations and your support, we would not be able to be on the air doing what we do. So I do want to take that minute to do that. I know that you're not going to do it, and I'm the same way. I'm not going to beg for donations either. But, I believe in what you do, Chuck. I think you are the hardest working man in radio today, and I think you're entitled to it. So if you guys have a minute and you're listening, go to Ochelli.com, hit the donate button, or become a member to get exclusive content. And Chuck puts out some of the best stuff out there. I listen to Chuck even when I'm not on his show. So that should tell you everything you need to know.
There we go. And I do appreciate that, man. And, that's another thing is that when it comes to alternative media, we're not corporate sponsored. We're not being paid off to give certain views and to bury commercial ads in our shows and stuff like that. When we explore issues, we explore them for ourselves. When we take a look at products, whether they be, something that's negative or positive, out there, things that are doing damage to you and trying to inform you and stuff like that, we're doing this not because we're motivated by the dollar. So, here's the thing, just like all of the shows on American Freedom Radio, AFR also has a donate button. Listen, maybe you don't like me. It's okay. Maybe you like some of the other shows. Maybe you love Daniel and you're going, Jesus, he's got Chuck on there again. I'm sorry. I promise you I won't be here every week. But the thing is, you could also support American Freedom Radio by going to the donate banner on AFR, and there's a button there as well. And, of course, Zen in the Car has one too. So you got many choices. Vote with your dollar and give value for value, folks.
Yeah, okay. There's another host on this network. I think Vinny Eastwood talks about peer-to-peer economy, which is, we support each other through donations and through you support what you love. If you like what Chuck does, support him. Really. I mean, don't wait for somebody else to do it. If you support what I do, do that too. AFR, I'll tell you something about AFR. Oh, I'm a control freak, and Chuck, you know that when it comes to, my image, my brand, and all that, which I hate using those type of corporate titles, but it's a fact that it exists. But, whenever Danny gave me the opportunity to come on the air, the only rule that he gave me was have fun.
Yeah, no rules at all except one. Have fun.
And if that's not worth a Starbucks, a pocket full of change, I don't know what it is, because we're not being told what to bring you. And for the most part, we speak our minds. We say what we have to say, which brings me to the issue of the Oregon standoff.
Oh, boy.
And we had an episode, the first episode, we had Jason Patrick and Sabrina Black on from Zen in the Car, notably. And as I said last week, it was not the intention of the show to speak my personal beliefs on the standoff. It was more or less to kind of let Jason Patrick tell people out there what was really going on the ground. I've gotten some feedback from that interview. Chuck, have you?
I actually haven't gotten very much back. I've gotten a little bit regarding my interaction and how, some people are a little defensive of me, right? So they often think I'm slighted by certain things. I wasn't bothered by it personally, but it seemed as though Jason might have given a couple of attitudes toward me or toward you during the discussion, things like that. And I think people are a little oversensitive regarding that. But the truth is, I think it was revealing the discussion we had, and we tried to do it from as objective a point of view as possible last week. However, as you watch a situation unfold, your views may change. And the thing is, I got to be honest with you, Daniel, my views have actually transformed about this issue over the past couple of weeks. Now, when this emerged, many of us, especially you and others, were personally impacted because we knew a few of these people. We knew people like them if we didn't know them, and we felt as though we had to worry on their behalf a bit. Right. And I mean, I even discussed this a bit with Roger Landry on Tuesday and tried to get him to talk about it. And here's a man who thinks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I swear to you, he is 20 hours a day at his computer, pumping out information, pushing back against any kind of tyranny that he can think of, organizing people to get the word out, to get people thinking and things like that. And that's what he does. Right.
Yeah, that was a great show.
But even he, if you notice, had a bit of he had to take a moment. He had to pause. And you know Roger not to pause. You've listened to my show enough. He had to pause when addressing this issue because it's unfolding in such a way that it's not one of those, I can give you a 5-second statement about it. I mean, that's the way I see it. How about you?
The Oregon standoff. I have to say, I really wanted to be behind this thing in the beginning. I truly did. But, it's like getting into a new relationship after a long stint of being single. When you first meet that girl, she has that new girl smell. She's pretty. She says all the right things, has all the right moves. However, if you stick around long enough, you come to find out she is much like Time Magazine. She's got a lot of issues.
And just as a qualifier out there, we're not going to brand or copyright the meme. You can go ahead and write it, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to create one. New girl smell. Yeah, that might be a new phrase on Facebook this week, so be prepared for that, Daniel.
Well, you know what they say after you get married, it's like buying a car,
No, I got your reference.
It's brand new, and then the newer models come out, and you're like, I want one. No, but with the Oregon standoff, it's in the beginning it was a personal thing for me because I do have a friend that is there, but then I have to, and obviously I was worried. Whenever you're getting news from quote unquote alternative media that's pumping out the FBI's ready to raid, there's going to be another Waco. They're staging at the school. They're staging here. They're going to send in, special ops and all that. You worry. You have to filter it through mainstream media. But then again, you still have to doubt whether or not they're telling the truth, So me having somebody there that I am personally connected to had me worried, obviously. But then again, I have to go, well, I'm also, I have to put my journalist hat on and I have to look at this objectively. And not personally, and see if what is going on in Oregon is really helping the cause of freedom and liberty and the restoration of the Constitution. And I got to tell you, Chuck, the longer that this thing goes on, I am having to really kind of bite my tongue about some things. But I don't think that this stand in Oregon is the best possible thing that could have happened. I think that at this point it's doing more harm than good. And there are a lot of reasons why I think that. When they were first there for the first few days, I was very excited. I was like, oh, great, something other than talk is happening, right? People are doing something. And then when it was obvious that the feds are not going to do anything and local law enforcement's not going to do anything, I was like, okay, well, what are you guys going to do now? So then we get on the news feed that they tore up a fence. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. And, just like you, I was starting to question, and I'm going to put it to you this way. I wasn't looking at it from the perspective of what is good for the liberty movement in general, because I have never been, although I've been associated to people that are in the liberty movement. I've never been described as a liberty movement guy. Mm-hmm. I'm very much about freedom of speech. I'm very much about, demanding that your rights are recognized and things like that. But I've never been sort of pulled into those circles, as you have. So I looked at it as a strategy problem with peaceful protest. So this, I'm sure, was also crossing your mind while you were considering the greater picture about people in the movement whom you've had lots of interactions with over the years too, right?
Yeah, I mean, if the conversation is going to stay on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, I'm all for it. Once the conversation starts to drift away from that, we have a problem. And that's what's going on with this Oregon standoff. The first few days, it was very clear that this was not just about the Hammonds, but it was about the Constitution. Well, that dialogue has changed. And it's changed drastically to where now you have these guys are, they tore up a fence live on YouTube in front of cameras. Now, we have some problems here, guys. For one, the rancher who they allegedly said asked them to do it has been out in front of several press or media outlets saying that he did not know that they were going to do that. He did not give them permission, and that he's very upset and he's going to rebuild the fence. So, that doesn't look good. It doesn't look good when you're on video using government equipment or BLM equipment to tear down BLM fences when the rancher who you allegedly say that you're coming to help has, disavowed you. That does not look good.
Right, and here's the question. When you don't have the support and the permission of the rancher, and you don't have the support and the permission of the alleged body which is supposed to be governing this fence, at the moment, and you don't have the support of the townspeople, you start to wonder if you're not being motivated by them encouraging you to do this. Then you start to think, as an outsider, Daniel, now excuse me, what is the motivation to do this, right? I mean, and it's an honest question. I'm not attacking anybody here, and in principle, I would like to agree with what they're doing. It's been peaceful thus far, and for that I will absolutely give them all the props necessary there. But as we say, there's a strategic problem here, right?
Well, you have that as an issue. You also have these guys who are there and who support the Oregon standoff, kind of putting out that the fire chief resigned and that he caught FBI, near an armory in Harney County, posing as the militia. So that was pumped out for a day, and then we get the news that no, the fire chief actually came back and said, well, that's not what I said. I didn't catch FBI posing as militia, So it's like for every justification that the militia guys in Oregon are giving out, we find out within a few hours that it's just hype. It's not true. And it makes me wonder where this information is coming from. And I got to admit, it's coming from quote unquote alternative media who are embedded in this situation, who are getting a lot of YouTube hits, right. Making a name for themselves. Their name escapes me. I'll just say Walrus Jones. Have you ever seen that movie, The Fly, with Jeff Goldblum?
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. Yeah. So if you took Alex Jones and put a walrus in one of these teleportation devices, and their DNA mixed and something came out on the other side, you would end up with this gentleman that I just referred to as Walrus Jones, who is embedded in the Oregon standoff, who is disrupting public meetings. And one of the things that I did notice from the stream, which that kind of reminds me of getting pissed on, the stream.
Well, listen, hold on just a second. Don't forget, you got to add a cowboy hat.
You got to put a cowboy hat on that walrus.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt, but
yeah. So you're getting people like Walrus Jones who are out there who are going to public meetings wearing press badges and press vests and then interrupting peaceable assemblies.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, you can't sit there and claim the First Amendment. The First Amendment has things like commas and semicolons in it. If you're going to have freedom of speech, don't be the press. All right.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be the press, shut the hell up and report what's being said. If you're going to disrupt a peaceable assembly, don't be surprised when they kick you out. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense because, after all, you are talking about a peaceable assembly where the public was being heard and also hearing what was happening. It was being reported on them directly, by the people that were involved on the government side. I think there was a representative there. There was a sheriff there. There was, quite a few individuals who are involved in the situation telling you, listen, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. And it seemed to me as though this is a local problem. Wait a minute. That sounds to me like what should be agreed to by most people in the Patriot movement. Why don't people in the community make their desires, beliefs, and wishes known to their representatives? It sounded to me like, and looked to me like, actually, that peaceable assembly was precisely the kind of thing that many people, like I said, that say that they're part of the Patriot movement would absolutely be in favor of.
Well, here's my issue, and Jason Patrick, who is there, who I am friends with, but I do have to wear an objective journalistic hat, often says that the best way to protest anything is to say no thank you, right? No thank you, we don't need your government here. Well, in every unedited footage that I've seen of the community, overwhelmingly, Harney County does not want the militia there and have asked them to leave. I mean, Harney County is looking at these guys and they're saying, no, thank you. So we have a little bit of an ideological contradiction going on. If it's okay to look at the government and say, no, thank you, we don't need you, the community of Harney County has said overwhelmingly, no, thank you. We appreciate that you guys are concerned about the Hammonds. We appreciate that you're concerned about the BLM, but thank you. No, thank you. We don't need you here. Please go home. And these militia guys have not heeded that plea. And that doesn't look good, on the liberty movement, on the militia. It doesn't look good. When the county is saying, please go home, you're disrupting our lives. Thank you for putting a spotlight on this, but your time is done, right?
Well, and that's the thing is that, as I said before, and I'll say again, those who are in the Patriot movement, what is often the argument for their disagreement, their grievances? It is that the will of the people is not being adhered to by the government, by the agencies, by the powers that be, whatever they may be, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel.
Well, here's the way that I'm kind of looking at it is these guys who are at the standoff are saying, well, we're bringing liberty and freedom and a message and hope to the people of Harney County. Yeah, but you're doing it against their will. I mean, if you were to ask these guys individually, do you agree with foreign occupation of Afghanistan or Iraq? Do you believe it's okay that we send troops around the world to spread the ideals of quote unquote a democracy, which I don't believe in, but that's what they say.
Right.
Do you believe it's okay for us to go into foreign countries and force our way of life onto them? I think right down the line, these guys would say, no, I don't agree with that. We're not the policemen of the world. But in this instance, that's what's happening. It's just within, the continental states. Right?
Well, right. That's not to say that these guys are going in there and invading as an army would necessarily or anything like that, but the principle remains the same, that if the people do not want it, look, Daniel, really, tell me something. Isn't it all about every time that the people do not want this is not right for the people, we're defending the public's rights. We're defending, well, listen, if they don't want you there, then don't they have a right to say who can come in their community?
Right.
That's all I'm thinking this entire time is if they truly don't want you there, and at first I thought it must just be the mainstream media spin, and of course they're going to spin it that way. Right. And believe me, if there was 5 guys out of 5,000 that didn't want them there, they would have found them.
Yeah.
But
well, I'm sure if me and you were to go to Afghanistan or Iraq, we're going to find a few Iraqis or Afghanis who say they love American occupation. But that's kind of irrelevant when it comes to the fact that as a whole, those countries don't want us there, you know? And I think, yeah, if you go to Harney County, you're going to find a few people who agree with what they're doing, obviously. But at the end of the day, you know, one of the points that I think is a little bit lost is that, you know, when these militia guys went out to the Bundy Ranch in Nevada, it was clearly established that they understand that the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, is a privately owned corporation. It's a company, right? So this whole argument about the Constitution and, you know, Article 8, whatever it is that they keep quoting, for them not to be able to purchase land 10 square miles outside of Washington does not apply because this is a private company. So since this is a private company, let's say that, for example, Coca-Cola comes into my neighborhood and they buy out the property next to me, right? It's not federal. It's a company, and they purchased the land. You know, maybe they contracted with the landowners or whatever. There was some money exchanged. Does that give me a right, because I don't agree with the chemicals that they put in certain sodas, for me to occupy, you know, a Coca-Cola bottling company and then use their equipment, their computers, and destroy their property? No, that doesn't give me a right. I mean, is that making sense, Chuck? This is a privately owned company. It's not the federal government.
Right. And in your case there with the Coca-Cola, that theoretical case, I mean, you could inform your neighbors that this is a negative entity which has entered in their midst. You could get them to collectively get together and say, we don't want this in our neighborhood. You could do things like that. But the truth is, if you were to go onto the parking lot, you know, buildings, whatever, and occupy them, take their trucks, and
that's a criminal offense.
That becomes a criminal offense, and unfortunately, you know, where is the justification for? In some cases, you can say that a criminal offense is justified because a criminal act has been committed against you, and you have no other alternative, right? You know, in which case it's not. Like, for instance, if someone were to attack you, you know, and you killed them, normally killing another human being is not acceptable. But if you did that in self-defense, my friend, and you can prove that, obviously, the way it's supposed to work is that, obviously, you didn't commit a crime, you just defended yourself, right? So there is a right way to do this under the circumstances. And what we have here is a set of circumstances that does not match what they're doing, and their actions are now going well above and beyond a peaceful protest. And truthfully, I'm going to say this, and, you know, you or anybody else can disagree with me if you like, but the fact is that they have now given justification to really endanger themselves. You know, now if something happened, if people attempted to apprehend them because crimes have been committed, because damage has been done to something that was not part of the deal here when it came to the public's land and everything else, and you know, meanwhile nobody is pushing back against this agency again. You know, like you said with the rancher. I mean, look, I know it sounds convoluted coming out of my mouth, but there's a reason for that. This whole thing has now gotten convoluted. It's not about the Constitution. It's not about the Hammonds. And it's not about... Yeah.
What it's about is Stephen Colbert getting punchlines for his show every night, and that's what it's become.
Right.
And, you know, you can't claim at the Bundy Ranch that the BLM is a private company and then in Oregon claim that it's a federal agency, so you're just going to take the land. Look, it's one or the other. Now, I do lean that the BLM, from all the research that I've done, the BLM is a private company. It's a private corporation. And so this does not bring constitutional issues. It brings personal property. All right? And
right. And in which case you're dealing with, you know, the resolution of contract issues, which is a far different kettle of fish, let's just say, from dealing with somebody's constitutional rights being violated.
Right. Well,
I mean, unless maybe I'm crazy, Daniel. I don't know, but I'm seeing it the same way you are.
And like I said, I wanted to support this from the beginning because I do have personal skin in the game, but I have to be objective and I have to look at it, from, in my opinion, what's going on now has completely erased all the, progress that we made at the Bundy Ranch. It's erased it. And it's put a black eye on the liberty movement, and it's put a black eye on anybody who mentions the Constitution. But we do have Derrick Grayson on the line who, Derrick, you there? We have Derrick?
Yep, I'm here.
Hey, how's it going, Derrick? This is a man who needs no introduction here in Georgia. Most people know him as the Minister of Truth. He's also running for Senate. You can find him on YouTube at Derrick Grayson. If I'm correct, you're one of the founders of OperationEducate.me, and a patriot. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm hanging in there. How about yourself?
Well, I'm trying to make it. You're here with Chuck Ochelli too.
Hey, Chuck.
How you doing, Derrick? I haven't spoken to you in a long time, sir, but it's a pleasure to be on the air with you.
Well, likewise. Glad to be here.
We were just discussing the Oregon standoff, and I don't want to throw it on you, but are there any comments or opinions that you have about the Oregon standoff?
All I will say is this. I understand their frustration and why they acted or took the action that they did. I would have taken a different course. I believe that as long as the ballot is available, we make use of it by way of recall and pink slipping people that put these laws in place. So I would not have, me personally, engaged in taking up arms on federal property, whether they have a constitutional right to it or not. So
right.
That's really all I have to say on that.
Right, and I know that you're feeling a little under the weather, and we really appreciate you coming on tonight. But you are running for Senate in Georgia, and
yes.
I was a part of Team Grayson's semi. I was kind of reporting on Team Grayson when you ran last term, and one of the things that I found is that at every debate that you were at, if you were there live, there was no doubt, hands down, that you won every single debate. But the mainstream media, obviously, either deleted you from their headlines or, skewed what you said. I'm a person who was activated by Ron Paul, much like yourself, to the idea of constitutional republic. And I found that when I entered the Republican Party and wanted to do something, that I was pushed out. Do you feel the same way?
Absolutely. I haven't talked a lot about it, but I've been under attack on my job, believe it or not. And it is from outside influences. I'm not going to mention my employer's name.
Right.
If anybody really wants to know, they can easily find that information out. It's not hidden. But suffice it to say, I've been with this company for 13 years. And, of course, I ran in the 2014 race. Mm-hmm. And it was not a problem for my employer at the time. But they received a phone call from Channel 2 News wanting to know if I was violating any type of federal or state law by being an employee and running for U.S. Senate. So on Monday, my employers told me I had 24 hours to quit the race or be terminated. Yes, that's what they said. And I said, wait a minute. I ran in the 2014 race. You didn't say a word.
Right.
Why are you doing this now? Well, it just came to our attention. You got to be blind as a bat could not know that I was running. But to make a long story short, Alex Johnson, in my mind, one of the best attorneys that you could ever find,
right,
drafted a letter and sent it to my employer. And they backed off for the time being. I don't know what's going to be the end of it. But as of Friday, my badge still worked.
So,
and I'm still in the race.
So, you mind if I ask a question, Daniel?
Go ahead.
Mr. Grayson, you know, the reason why I believe that you are likely coming under attack is for some of the very common sense positions that you have taken. You are sort of a controversial individual running for office there, and I liked talking to you. I mean, I said, and I'm somebody who says that I don't believe in voting very often at this point because there is hardly ever anybody worth casting a ballot for. I remember that you are the first political figure that I've ever said on the air I would be happy to vote for. And I would like you to kind of give people an idea of the general character of your platform, let's just say, of your need to run for office. I mean, what is it that has inspired you to run for office? Because you are very different from any other candidate that I examined the last time you were running. So, I mean, I'd like you to kind of, you know, because there's plenty of people that are listening that have never heard of you, and I would like them to get an idea of what kind of character inspires these sort of outside attacks. You know, what is it that's so controversial about you? And when people hear it, I think they will.
Chuck, I don't mean to interrupt, but and I don't mean to answer for Derrick, but I think it's the entire notion of 100% of the Constitution, 100% of the time. Oh, is that right, Derrick?
That is correct. I'm often asked why I'm running, and I answer that with a story that I want to point. I want to give you 3 points of reference first before I tell you the story of why I'm running, and then I'll give you just a little bit of the platform, which Daniel just summed up 100% of the Constitution, 100% of the time. First point of reference I want you to put in the forefront of your mind is cognitive dissonance. Essentially, you know something to be right, but you just can't accept it. So you continue down the same path regardless. That is where many of our voters are. And that's sad to say. So that's one of the points of contention that I deal with. The other point of contention is and I'm speaking from a Christian point of view. As a Christian, one of the struggles in the life of a Christian is that once you realize something that you've been doing is wrong or sin, you struggle with that because you know it's wrong. And if you know any Christian that has no struggle with right or wrong, trust me, they are not a Christian, because it's something that Christians deal with on a regular basis, and that's doing the right thing when they know to do otherwise is the wrong thing. And then the third point of contention is when you know that you're doing something wrong and you continue to do it anyway, Jesus getting on the cross and dying for you has become a worthless act. So this is where many people are in life. Now, with those 3 points of contention in your mind, let me explain why I'm running. In 1619, officially, is the date that they give when slavery began. You've got a group of people that have been subjugated by another group of people, made into slaves against their will. About 100 and some odd years later, we end up with our revolution. Later on down the road, slavery still exists. 1861, we get the Civil War. And out of that Civil War comes a notion of the Emancipation Proclamation, which wasn't widely accepted. That what the Declaration of Independence said was all men are created equal.
Amen.
And have natural rights or those inalienable rights, specifically the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That's right.
That was something that people still weren't willing to give to Negroes. So we ended up with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Now, this is 250 years down the road. We had to do the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment because people still weren't satisfied with that. Then we had Reconstruction. And with Reconstruction, out of that, because of the legacy of slavery, because people still weren't willing to accept the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, or what the Declaration of Independence said, we got the Black Code and Jim Crow to try and circumvent the spirit of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And then 100 years later, still wasn't enough. We had to get the Civil Rights Act. Now, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments should not have been necessary if the spirit of the Constitution was obeyed and applied equally to all men, as the Declaration declared all men to be equal.
Right.
350 years, Negroes fought along with white men. Make no mistake about it. There would not have been the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment if there weren't enough white people that realized that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution should apply to all men equally. That would not have happened. Nor would we have had the Civil Rights Act to try and undo Jim Crow. It took 350 years to drive that point home, that all men are created equal and possess natural rights given to them by their Creator that no man can take away. When that point was finally made, we went to sleep at the wheel, and in 1913, we got the IRS, we got the central bank, and we got the 16th Amendment, which was the beginning of slavery for all Americans.
That's true.
And since that time, we have seen an erosion of our liberties and freedoms progressively each and every new Congress that has been seated, each and every president. There have been a few that have fought against it. John F. Kennedy comes to mind. He was assassinated.
Yes, sir.
So why am I running? Because I know of a group of people that spent 350 years trying to become treated as equal men and women. Now I see the whole of America being turned into slaves by 535 people with each new Congress that is seated. I cannot sit on the sidelines and let this happen to my children. I am compelled to run and try and stop what is taking place. I have no other choice. As long as I have breath in my body, I must fight the corruption that is taking place at both the federal, state, and local government levels. That is why I am running, because What took place with the Negro is now taking place with everyone, where they don't give a damn about the Constitution. They didn't apply it to the Negro for 350 years. Now they are taking it away from each and every American in this country. That is why I'm running.
Right. And see, this is one of the reasons that, you know, and I talk about this often. Me and Chuck have talked about this on the air, that I talk about addiction, is that, you know, I suffered through what I suffered through so that I could help somebody else, even if it's one person. And, you know, I don't refer to you as an African American. You're an American. You happen to have darker skin than me, you know, but we're Americans. And there is this idea in the Constitution and our founding fathers that all men are created equal. Now, you do have some people out there who've tried to redefine what the definition of a man is, you know, to try to do a end run around that declaration. And as somebody who comes from Black America, you see things that white Americans don't see, which is, you know, for one, we have privately owned prison systems that are making profits off of arresting people for victimless crimes. And overwhelmingly, we find young Black men in these privately owned prisons. Is that something that you find to be true?
That is absolutely true. But see, here's the dirty little secret that most people are unaware of. They're now doing it to everybody. It's not just Black people being warehoused in prison. Poor whites. The system is now impacting. Remember I said, it's not just Black folk. It's everybody. And that's what the press is not telling you. The press covers what takes place with Black people, and they talk about reform, but this now impacts everybody. Poor whites and Negroes. And guess what they're doing in government? Making more new poor people every day. And who are the most of these new poor people? White people. The jobs going overseas, the jobs being destroyed, offshore, et cetera, et cetera. These are white people losing these jobs. Unemployment has never been so high amongst white people, with the exception of the Great Depression.
Right.
That's
so this
correct.
is not a Black thing.
Right.
No, not anymore. Not anymore. So,
see, at one time, well, one second, Daniel, you know, I want to absolutely say that is the most sane and cogent description of what has happened in this nation that I've heard in a very, very long time. There was a point at which you had the complexion for the connection, right? And this was the deal. You know, in certain circles you could do this and you could do that, but the truth is that the plantation model is now nationwide. That is the reality. And it is not about the color of one's skin. That is the model, though. That is the model, because most certainly it was done to men of color first. And, you know, I hope you're not upset with that term, but that is the nicest thing I can say regarding what the categories of individuals that people felt were acceptable to oppress in this country at one point. But now, quite honestly, it has come for all of us. And this needs to be recognized more by those who would call themselves white than even the alleged minority, which is a misnomer anyway, than the alleged minority in this country. That is the absolute truth. And I want to just take a moment to tell you exactly how common sense prevails in every single statement you just made, sir. And I want to thank you for it.
Well, you're quite welcome. I'm trying to be the alarm clock and saying the things that people don't get, and it's not any different than in what it was when we got our Declaration of Independence, the founding document for this country, and our Constitution. It's no different. If you don't obey the Constitution, you're going to have problems. We violated the spirit of the Constitution in the treatment of Negroes. Now we're violating the spirit of the Constitution today in the treatment of all American citizens.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've noticed about you, and this will get back to what's going on with your employer, is, you know, when Ron Paul was running, he's the one that politically activated me. I remember, you know, racing home to see what T-Mont had to say, right? You know, on your YouTube channel. You know, I was like, well, what's T-Mont got to say? And then when I found out that you were in Georgia, I was very overwhelmed. And then years later, I had a hand in a mission statement after Ron Paul, his candidacy was stolen from him in Tampa. I had a hand in a mission statement that said, you know, where do we go from here? You know, what do we need to do? We need to inject ourselves in the media, in the churches, in the police forces, in politics. And I was overwhelmed with joy whenever I found out that you were running for Senate. And I think that one of the biggest obstacles that you face, especially in the Republican Party, is that I don't see you prepare for debates, and I don't see you with very many notes. The only thing that I really see is that you know your Bill of Rights, and you speak plainly. You speak in a manner that most Republicans don't understand, you know, and that's something that I think is needed. It's very much needed, and I don't think that the old school Republicans really understand the language that you're speaking, though the youth do, and we need it. Now, though I'm very glad that you're running, and I understand that you have a lot of obstacles within the establishment, now we find, you know, as you said at the top of the hour, that you're getting threatened by your employer to drop out of the race. So I have to ask, do you think this has to do with outside influence from your opponents?
Absolutely. If not him directly, from the establishment GOP. See, look, you know, we never accepted a single nickel from PACs or super PACs.
Right.
All of our donations came from individuals. Mm-hmm. We didn't raise a whole lot of money, but we finished the whole race. They know that I'm, for the most part, self-funded at the grassroots level. And I spend my own money on top of that. That said, what's the quickest way to shut me up? Take away my income.
Right.
And I can't run a race because now I'm worried about trying to feed my family. And that's why the attack came at my job. Again, I ran in 2012 and my employer didn't say a word. But now they're saying something. Why? Donald Trump has stirred up the anger within the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. People are mad. There is this, if there was ever a chance for me to beat Johnny Isakson, that chance is now, because people in the Republican Party are mad. They are ticked off. And if I'm going to beat Johnny Isakson, now is the time. And they don't want me in this race.
Welcome back. This is Daniel Lewis Crumpton, broadcasting from the 8th Congressional District of Georgia and the bridge of the Starships Enterprise. We've been having a very healthy conversation with a Senate candidate in here in Georgia, Derrick Grayson. In the passenger seat, we have Chuck Ochelli. Chuck, you back?
Oh, absolutely, Daniel. I'm anxious to get back to this discussion with Mr. Grayson because, again, I love the fact that this man has a clear, concise, and absolutely relevant and completely legitimate way of presenting what it is he believes. And, man, you're making me wish that I could vote for this man. I'm telling you, just by bringing him on again.
Don't want to waste any time while we have him. Want him to get his platform clear across. This is a man, and I was talking to you during the break, you know, I've seen him personally in debates where He wins hands down every time. He tears the roof off the place. And then when you pick up the newspaper the next day, the mainstream media says nothing about him. And this is of great concern. This man speaks from the heart. He is and I've had the privilege of being behind the scenes of his campaign, and I'll tell you, he is a true believer. This is not a politician. This is a statesman. This is a man who... you
didn't hear me use the word politician in what I just said, did you? No. No.
Whenever you watch political debates, you can tell that it's scripted. You can tell that they've been polished, they've been prepped. This guy doesn't do any of that. He has the Bill of Rights and, his spirituality, which I'm a great admirer of. And he speaks from the heart. And he can win the hearts and minds of millions if he were allowed to do so. Unfortunately, you have the blockade of the mainstream media that doesn't want him to do so. Now we find that it's a little obvious that he ran in 2014 for Senate and his employer said absolutely nothing about his candidacy. Now that he's established himself and has a base and can enact some real change, now they go after his throat with his income and say, well, you can't really run for political office if you work for us. When my question is, well, is there anybody else at his employer's office that has political office? Derrick, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Is there anybody else?
I'm here.
Is there anybody else at your place of employee that serves in a political seat?
Actually, no. No one that I am aware of is running for office, but just so that the viewers understand what is happening, there was an act called the Hatch Act, Hatch. I don't know what year it was passed, but it prohibited people working for government entities from running for federal offices, either the nomination or the office itself, if they were funded by the federal government. Our policy, written in 2002, was based on the Hatch Act. However, in 2012, the Hatch Act was amended, which covered me for 2012. I was aware of this, but when my employer approached me, I didn't tell them that I knew this.
Mm-hmm.
I just let them make their threat. The amendment was, and this is something that Obama signed. The amendment was, your job has to be 100% funded by the federal government in order for that to apply to me. That is why I am still there.
Right. Says
so
President.
My position is not 100% funded by the federal government.
The amendment that President Barack Obama signed is the Hatch Act Modernization Act of 2012 on December 28, 2012. It modified penalties under the Hatch Act to allow for disciplinary actions in addition to removal for federal employees, clarified the applicability of the District of Columbia provisions that cover state and local governments, limited the prohibition of state and local employee running for elective office to employees whose salary is paid completely by federal loans or grants. So does that apply to you or no?
That does not apply to me.
Okay, so
that's why I'm still there.
Right. Now,
so to terminate me, they would be violating my First Amendment rights.
What do you, I mean, and if you don't feel like answering the question, that's fine. But when it comes down to your employment or the Senate race, what are you going to go with?
Well, they'll have to fire me.
Right.
So the bottom line here is that you understand that that this shouldn't be an issue. Based on your understanding of things, of course, there may be some legal action that'll take place at some point, but realistically,
there will be some legal action.
Okay,
there will be some legal action.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking to Derrick, dude.
No, hey, look.
This is a slam dunk. This is a slam dunk. This is a slam dunk. My employer is not fully funded by the federal government.
Right.
So that should be the end of the issue, essentially. I mean, that's all there is to it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'd like to move on because this seems to me like it again is motivated exactly as you said by the concept of your opponents or those who don't wish to see you prevail, succeed, or even be heard. I think it's absolutely true that they are taking the rather devious action of trying to, disrupt your ability to support yourself and your family, because this is the type of thing that is done to anyone who truthfully speaks directly to the system and tells them where they're wrong, where they're out of line. And this is exactly what happens. And many people who are familiar with the type of show that Daniel and I are doing tonight, know that this is exactly the kind of tactic that is applied to people that are seen as dangerous. Now, why are you dangerous, Mr. Grayson? I would say you are dangerous because quite eloquently you are speaking the truth, sir. And that is what I hear coming from you. So, I don't know, Daniel. I mean, where else should we take this? I believe I would love to know, maybe more specifics about what it is that had encouraged a man like this to step forward, to run for office, to become involved in politics and things like that. Because generally speaking, the character of individuals that I see seeking political office is not of the exemplary stripe that this man is carrying. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you can help me here, and we can get at some of that with Derrick.
Well, what I tend to believe is that Ron Paul. And I don't want to beat on Ron Paul, but Ron Paul woke a lot of us up. He woke a lot of us up to what's going on in our country, and got us inspired. And a lot of us said, okay, where can I fit in and do the most good? I'm not cut out for politics. I'm just not. I'm not cut out to run for any particular office. That's not who I am. But Derrick is one who is, and is willing, and is unafraid. He's seen the oppression of the system the same way that we all have. And I don't want to speak for Derrick, but it's my belief that he asked himself, probably in prayer, where he could do the most good. And I believe that the most good that he can do is in politics, in running for Senate. Now, what I've seen is that when a man like this speaks truth to power, they really want to shut him down. They really do. And they when he was running last time for Senate, I saw some dirty tactics that were used not only by the Republican Party, but by the mainstream media. And so I believe it's incumbent upon all of us who are listening to support a man like this in any way that we can. It doesn't really matter if you're in Georgia. If we have a voice in the Senate that's going to speak truth to power in the way that this man does, you better back him. You better back him. Mm-hmm. Because he's only going to light more brush fires and inspire other men of his caliber to stand up and do the same. And Derrick is one of the first few nails to stand up, and so he's going to get the hammer. And we see that he's getting the hammer. And it's an inspiration to me to know that I'm not alone, in my belief system, in the ideas of freedom and liberty and the Constitution, and that somebody like him is willing to step toe to toe with these power elite and tell the truth. And I personally know that he is incorruptible. We're always looking for a politician that's incorruptible, somebody who is so firm in spirit and strength that they are incorruptible. And I've seen people who have wavered, in that incorruptibility. But I'm telling you right now, Derrick Grayson is not. And what I really want to know, Derrick, is what is it that inspired you to specifically go into politics and run for Senate? And why do you think that your message and your voice is going to be most important there?
Well, that's easy. So I gave you the foundation of why I have to run. The inspiration for running was my involvement in the 2011-2012 cycle of Ron Paul. When I got to Tampa, Florida, and saw how the establishment, now forget about all that I witnessed at precinct meetings and district meetings, how Ron Paul supporters were treated, or shall I say liberty supporters were treated. When I saw them change the rules for plurality at the convention to prevent Ron Paul from being nominated on the floor, that was my first-hand exposure to establishment corruption. And that's when I dubbed them as royals. I started using that term then. So that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And getting a broader view of everything is what I explained initially. Now, people have asked me, why am I different? I'm different for a couple of reasons. One, I need a bigger bullhorn. Not so that I can go to D.C. and make a bunch of noise, but so that I can make Georgia to become the example for all other states. Yeah. There are 535 people in D.C. People ask me, well, you're going to be just one of 100 senators, and then there are 435 representatives. How is just one man going to make a difference? Well, there are 315 million Americans. But I'm going to start with the 10.1 million here in Georgia. I'm not going to go to D.C. to try and make friends with those 534 bastards, excluding Ron Paul, that are destroying this country. I'm going to spend my time educating Americans. I'm going to use my staff to read each and every bill that comes across that floor and brief me and put our heads together to see if it's constitutional. And if it's constitutional, the vote will always be no. And we're going to push new legislation to get us back to constitutionality, like the fair tax. And then I want to encourage Georgians to fire state and local representatives. I want to know every bill that's going to go across the floor in the Georgia Assembly so that I can use that bullhorn to warn Georgians about what they are doing to them here. I only want to be in office 6 years. That's all I'll need to turn the tide and get the 10 million Georgians to see what's being done to them. I want to get the black people to see, even though you got a city like Atlanta and Decatur ran by black people, ain't nothing changed when it comes to black-on-black crime. Get places like Dublin to see. Just because you're white, the police will kick your door in and put a bullet in the back of your head, just like they did David Hooks, who did absolutely nothing wrong.
That's right.
I need that bullhorn. And I can get people, when you tell people what's being done to them, they do things differently. And that's why they're afraid of me. Because I am going to use the power of the people as opposed to going up there to D.C. to try and convince a bunch of people that don't give a damn about the Constitution to do the right thing. I'm going to motivate the people to fire them instead.
Right. And right now I want to take the opportunity. I know Derrick's not going to do it, but Derrick, what I want you to do right now, I don't care if you're in Georgia or not. I believe that this state can set an example for other states. And if we get a man like Derrick Grayson in the Senate, I believe that it will inspire change all over the country. Where can people contribute to your campaign?
Grayson2016.com. Okay. If they want to go directly to it, Grayson2016.com/donate.
Now, I don't know what the laws are on contributions. Out-of-state people can donate?
Anybody can contribute. No matter where you are, you just have to be a U.S. citizen.
Daniel, can you please spell out the name Grayson so people can find it definitely without an issue?
Grayson. If you're listening right now, don't hesitate. Don't wait till tomorrow. Get this man in office. We need this man in office. We need a voice. We need somebody who's going to represent the people. And it doesn't matter if you're in Georgia. If Georgia has to be the first state to step up and take a stand, so be it, if it inspires you to do so. But if you're listening and you're inspired by what you're hearing, don't wait. Go without a Mountain Dew tomorrow. Go without a Coca-Cola tomorrow. Do something. Every single dollar counts. Every single dollar. This is a peer-to-peer economy. And we're going to try to retake this country peaceably. And how we're going to do it is through a system that is, sure, it's broken. I agree with you. But it can be fixed. It can be fixed by men like this who speak plainly, who speak to the common man, who don't prepare for speeches, who don't prepare for debates, who have an understanding of the 10 amendments that apply to everyone. And right now is a critical moment because this guy he's stepping up for you. And he's having his livelihood threatened because he's stepping up for you. What are you going to do for him? That's a question that I put to you. What are you going to do for him? He is standing up for your rights. Stand up for him. Do that right now. And I don't mean to make it into a televangelist thing, but it's important. It's important, especially right now, that we have somebody like this who before he was even running for political office, he spoke truth to power, unabashedly, and I respect that. And I think all of you who are listening should respect that too. And you should do something, and you should be proud to do something and say that you had a part in it. So,
right. And something else I'd like to add here real quick, Daniel, and don't worry, I won't run on. Here's a fact, and I want the listener to take this into their mind. As far as I can tell from the way that this man is speaking, from what he is saying, ladies and gentlemen, even if you wind up disagreeing with some of the viewpoints that Mr. Grayson has given you tonight, and I don't see how you could, but let's just say you do, or you say to yourself, oh my, here's a man who talks about Christian values in his discussion, and maybe you object to that. Listen to me very carefully. This is what a leader sounds like. Okay? This is what a leader sounds like.
Well, one of the things that I find, and I want Derrick to respond to this, is that most people who are in spiritual circles or Christian circles are not political. They tend to stay away from it. But however, when I read my New Testament, it says that the government, the Old Testament says the government will be upon his shoulders. All messianic figures, and I'm not saying Derrick is a messianic figure. What I'm saying is all people who are spiritually minded are political activists. Isn't that true, Derrick?
Yes, it is. It is our duty to be involved in the type of community, the type of world that we live in, to try and influence justice and fair treatment of everyone. I would never go to D.C. and use my Bible to write law. How I use my Bible is to keep me from violating the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution. So that is what my Bible is for, to keep me honest to the people that I serve and to keep me focused on my fidelity to the Constitution. So the Constitution is all that I need to do my job as a senator. My Bible is all that I need to be faithful in doing my job and obeying the Constitution.
Right. Now, it's my personal belief that the Ten Amendments are inspired by the Bible, the trial of Jesus. If you look at everything that went wrong with the Christ, he had a kangaroo court, not of his peers. And you look at that trial where he remained silent. It's my belief that the Ten Amendments are inspired by the Bible. So I believe, personally, that the Constitution is a divinely inspired document. Is that an idea that you share?
I believe that there were a group of men that got together, a group of good men that got together, and they fashioned our Constitution. Some were Christian, some were agnostic, some were atheists.
Mm-hmm.
See, with me and what I understand that a lot of people don't get, as a Christian, I have fire insurance. I'm a good man.
Mm-hmm.
But there are good men who don't believe in God. Because even Jesus said there is honor even amongst thieves. Well, maybe Jesus said maybe a proverb. But the point that I'm making is you don't have to love God to care about your family. And I would never go or purport that everybody that put together the Constitution believed in God, because they didn't. Factually speaking, they didn't. But they were good men who wanted the best thing for this country.
Right.
My Christian faith is personal to me. And as the word says, let each and every person work out their own soul's salvation. I leave it up to the individual to work out their soul's salvation through Jesus Christ. If they choose not to, I leave that on them, because only God judges, and he will judge in the end. But in the meantime, don't tread on me by violating my Bill of Rights. And
right.
That's kind of where I leave.
Right, and you are inspired more by the idea that your fellow man, your fellow people around you, your children, the individuals who are being impacted by what is happening now, this must be answered by setting things straight, basically. I mean, that's really what it's about. It's not as though This is about your faith. Your faith guides you. That's obvious, but it's not about your faith. It's about doing the right thing for yourself and for the people you care about and for everyone that you see being tread upon. Am I right?
There you go. There you go.
See, a lot of the problems, especially within the southern districts, the Republican Party, is the doctrine of Israel. And I'm not a dispensationalist. I'm not a Zionist or anything like that. I have my own personal views on the nation state of Israel. But it's been my observation in these Republican meetings that a lot of them are Southern Baptists who do subscribe to dispensationalism and the idea that the nation state of Israel is God's plan, God's chosen people. And they are very, antsy to speak out against Israel. I'm not trying to pin you into a corner or anything like that, but I would really like to hear your position on the Israeli and Palestinian situation.
I'm going to go with what George Washington said: beware of foreign entanglements. We have a constitution that allows for treaties with other nation states. Treat Israel as any other ally, and not based on anything that has to do with religion, but based on what's in the treaty. And as we would any other ally. So I don't get into the Jew bashing, Zionist bashing, or any of those things.
Right.
I believe that we should treat all of our allies equally according to our treaties with them. And I don't believe we should be funding anybody's war.
Right. So I'll take the opportunity to pin him a little bit and say this. What you're saying, disagree with me if you like, but what you're saying is that this is not about if you were involved, if you were a member of the government who had the ability to interact with foreign nations, you would be guided by the practicality and the need which is motivated by the benefit of the citizens you are representing. This would be your primary concern, and it does not matter if it is the nation state of Israel or if it is Turkey or if it is Guatemala. Regardless, you are going to look at it objectively and not be guided by any of the encouragements of others or be dissuaded by it. You're going to deal with it head on as the situations arise, if given the opportunity. Am I right?
That is exactly right, and I will avoid foreign entanglements that have nothing to do with us.
There you go.
There you go.
Which, unfortunately, is a handicap of the Republican Party. Now, switching gears real quick, I would like, because we are talking to an audience way outside of Georgia, I would like for you to speak on the issue of Nydia Tisdale. Tell the people who she is and what her situation is and why you feel that it's an important issue.
Nydia Tisdale, I became acquainted with her after watching a video where she was manhandled by a goon. And what incensed me, this was a sheriff's deputy, what incensed me about the incident, and I was not there, but as a man, had I been there, I could not have abided her treatment as a man. I would have been compelled to do something.
Well, Derrick, because we're dealing with an audience that's primarily outside of Georgia, tell the people who she is and what she does.
She is a videographer who goes to events, political events. Doesn't matter what party. She goes to events, public events, and she videotapes them. She showed up at Bert's pumpkin patch or pumpkin farm, something. I think that's what it is. And she was videotaping one of the speakers who made a remark to her, I don't know what you're recording this for. And then somebody else said something, and they proceeded to physically remove her from the premises.
And that's my understanding. The governor was in the first seat.
All in the presence of Nathan Deal, Governor Nathan Deal, who just sat there and didn't say a word. And this was a public event where people were invited, and she wasn't the only person videoing. And this deputy, 3 times her size, manhandled her. She prevailed in court and won a settlement. I'm glad for that. But, you know, the biggest losers are the taxpayers, because that's who had to pay that bill, because these politicians operate out of hubris. When they don't want you recording what it is that they're saying, they get offended. And that's what it was about. The man found offense in the fact that they know she is an unbiased videographer who simply puts it out there the way that it is. She don't twist it. She don't add a slant. If it's what you said, that's what she presents. And that's what they didn't like. And that's why they had her removed and took her camera from her. But Nydia Tisdale, she is a giant as far as I'm concerned, and she represents free press. Daniel, like yourself. Free press that's not bought off, that is not slanted, that just simply presents it the way that it is. And that's what we don't have anymore.
No, Miss Tisdale is a little bit different than me because I offer my opinion and add commentary. But what she does is she shows up to political meetings and she simply records. That's all she does.
Yep.
So she's just documenting the events.
That's it. And you can find her on YouTube. It's Nydia is her first name, Nydia. And her last name is Tisdale. You can find her online, and please do. But all she does is document. She doesn't add commentary like me. She just records. And the pumpkin farm was not the first incident. She actually was removed from a woman's the Republican woman's political meeting. I don't know what it was, where, you know, they confront her on camera, and I believe they either slap her or her camera because she's recording what they're doing. Well, you know, I mean, what are you hiding? What are you hiding that you do not want this woman to record? Yeah?
Yep, I'm with you. But like I said, they paid for that mistake.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, they're still coming at her, but this is a danger that people who are in our position, which is, you know, fighting the status quo, we face on a daily basis, and people really don't realize how much we put out there. You know, we face harassment. We face, like in your case, your employment is getting threatened. Why? Because we're expressing something? Because we're expressing a document that this country was founded upon? Because it's going to hurt.
There are people that would rather see you dead than for you to awaken somebody else. There are people that hate me simply because of what I post on my wall, because they're afraid somebody else might see it. They can completely ignore me and block me, but the fact that I put it on my wall, they hate me for it. Yes, there are people out there that would rather see you dead than speaking the truth.
Right.
Right. In various instances, people are denied employment for their views that they've shared publicly, for speaking out. You know, yours has been threatened, but some people have been denied employment. Some people have been physically harassed, have been verbally harassed online, stalked. You name it, actually. The amount of backlash that can occur when you attempt to speak truth to power. I mean, that's the bottom line, I would say.
Absolutely, and I agree.
Well, Derrick, I don't even know where the term switching gears came from, but doing that. Me and you are both Ron Paul supporters. This year, the only person I will be casting a ballot for is you. But I'd like to hear your view on the presidential race.
Sure. There is only one person who cares about the Bill of Rights. His name is Rand Paul. The Bill of Rights is not important to everybody else as it is Rand Paul. And I'm going to say this to anybody listening. Everybody is crazy about what Donald Trump is doing. I'm glad Donald Trump is doing what he's done. I'm glad he's gotten people upset. I'm glad he's not PC. Donald Trump don't give a damn about the Bill of Rights. Donald Trump used eminent domain to try and take a woman's property. I have a problem with that. And I don't hear Donald Trump talking about the Bill of Rights. When I campaigned in 2014, I said I want to repeal Obamacare. All of my opponents said they wanted to repeal Obamacare and replace it. Well, that's unconstitutional. There's no place in the Constitution that allows for the government to provide health care for its citizens. That's something that should be left to states. And that means you believe and support the 10th Amendment. Donald Trump, words out of his own mouth, I want to repeal and replace Obamacare. He'll be no different than any other president that we've had, violating the Bill of Rights. It has to end with the firing and the ignoring of people that don't care about the Bill of Rights. Chris Christie doesn't believe in your right to use marijuana recreationally, let alone for medicinal purposes. He'll also shoot down Russian jets, giving us World War III. Russia has been invited to fly over Syria. That's a sovereign nation. But we want to engage in regime change. Same thing with Rubio. Cruz, I will make the sands glow. None of them have ever served, but yet they will send our sons and daughters to go and die on foreign soil when it should be their sons and daughters shedding their blood for their land first. We should be engaged in regime change, and that's all this is about, getting rid of Assad. We destabilized the Middle East. We did that. That's a fact. So what I think about the presidential race, there's only one candidate worthy of my vote, and his name is Rand Paul, because he cares about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. The rest of them don't. And if there's anybody out there, everywhere when I went and spoke on the debate stage, I say, raise your hands if less than 100% of the Constitution is okay with you. Nobody ever raised their hand. Nobody. But they voted for David Perdue. Yep. He got elected. And he said that he didn't believe in campus carry, and he wanted to repeal and replace Obamacare. So that amazes me about people. How can you say you care about the Constitution when you vote for people who don't? It don't make no sense to me. I don't understand it. Those are my thoughts on the...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was just going to ask you about the fair tax proposal that I see discussed in relation, to what's going on the ground and things like that. Because the economy, after all, is one of these questions that comes up. And I see that you have a petition for the fair tax that you support. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Could you kind of explain that to people who maybe never seen it or have no idea what it is?
Sure. Essentially, the fair tax undoes what took place in 1913 that made everybody in America slaves to the government. It abolishes the IRS, and it repeals the 16th Amendment. The only thing that it does not do at the outset is get rid of the central bank. So that's a fight for another day. But getting rid of the 16th Amendment, abolishing the IRS is a key point. And without getting into the weeds, the fair tax, there are some very simple things. It undoes what NAFTA did to America. NAFTA caused millions of jobs to go overseas and created a trade imbalance. With a fair tax, because of how it's structured and what it will do in terms of how we deal with countries that we trade with, it will level the playing field, thus giving incentives for employers and businesses to start bringing jobs back to our country. It will encourage investment that will also create more jobs. So essentially, the fair tax will create jobs. See, we're being told that the government creates jobs. Government doesn't create jobs. The government creates bureaucracy, and they hire people in the bureaucracy. They create temporary jobs, like if they're going to build an interstate highway. But for the most part, it is the American people that creates jobs. And we've allowed government to get in the way of the creation of jobs. Other things that the fair tax will do, if I earn it, I keep it in my pocket, and I don't pay a tax on it, a federal tax on it, unless I go and buy a new product or service. That's it. I earn it, I keep it. If I'm going to go out and buy new used stuff, I pay no tax. But if I'm going to buy new products and services, I pay that tax. I pay that tax one time. And the other thing that it does, because I see that tax instantly at the register, it'll be hard for the government to just keep increasing spending, raising the debt ceiling, because in order to do that, they have to raise that tax on us. Everybody at this point will have a vested interest in that tax because everybody will pay the tax. That's the hookers, the hoes, the pimps, the prostitutes, everybody has a vested interest in what the government can take from us. And then the move would be to restrain government and to force the tax rate to go down, not up. And that in itself, just the motion of that action will tend to force government to not spend more than they make. So that's a brief overview of the tax, the fair tax. A lot of people say, well, it's regressive. It's going to hurt poor people more. Well, if you're poor Why is a poor person concerned about going out and buying a $200 pair of sneakers? You can't afford them anyway. So that don't matter. And if you don't spend it, you don't pay the tax. That'll encourage saving. Buy used stuff. I mean, people go to the thrift market already anyway. So all of those are just reasons to not do it. And why? The fair tax has been sitting in D.C. since 1999. Why don't they want the fair tax? Because people, businesses, corrupt corporations have invested billions into our tax code that allows them to circumvent the tax system and not pay taxes. With the fair tax, all of those loopholes go away. And that is the reason why nobody is pushing for the fair tax. And the American public at large is not aware of the benefits of the fair tax. That's why you don't have a lot of politicians talking about it. David Perdue ran on, I'm going to push the fair tax. He ain't done nothing to bring us the fair tax.
We only have a few minutes left. You are a veteran. Is that true?
Yes, it is. U.S. Navy. 6 years.
Me and you have very personal connections to the plight of veterans, especially coming home with PTSD, and how the VA is not taking care of them. I want the people out there to hear your view on how we deal with veterans coming back, how we deal with our military, things of that nature. So
we treat our veterans like we treat our veterans like crap. We've turned them into mercenaries. When they come home, we don't give them the care that they need. I know people firsthand that have spent months, if not years, trying to get the care that they need. Now, all of a sudden, Johnny Isaacson gives a damn about what's going on with the veterans. And every time you turn around, he's at some base. Johnny, why weren't you doing this before? Why now? Oh, it's election season. Everybody now cares about the veterans. They're cutting veterans' benefits, forcing people into retirement, cutting their pensions. They don't. The government doesn't care about veterans, and they show it every day. Otherwise, suicide rate wouldn't be what it is. Morale is horrible, and that's because of the leadership that we have. And I read an article that basically said the reason we treat our troops so poorly is because we have a higher percentage now than ever in the history of this country of people that have never even served. That's right. Everybody up there on that debate stage ready to send our troops off to war, World War III, and have never served. And the only one who is talking about caution and peace first is Rand Paul. So, yeah, I care about the troops and how they're being mistreated. And I will do something about it. We only knew about what was happening at Walter Reed because it was leaked. But you don't think people knew about that beforehand? They even had a bill that was put forth. And my representative, Hank Johnson, he voted against this bill. You want to know what the bill was for? It was to make it easier to fire people that were in charge at these Veteran Administration hospitals. That's what the bill was for. There were people that voted against it. That should tell you what they think about our troops.
Daniel, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay. I do know a lot of returning veterans who are advocates of decriminalization of cannabis for their PTSD, which is a huge problem. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a problem that is more epidemic now in our generation than I think it's ever been. And most of them are crying out for medical cannabis. What's your thoughts on that, Derrick? We still have Derrick?
Well, perhaps there's a little drop in the line or something, but But look, let's be honest here. This is a man who, as I said earlier, sounds to me, Daniel, exactly like what I would imagine a leader to sound like. Does not speak as a politician does. Truly a man who has his principles in line with the people he wishes to represent. And, I just find him amazing and inspiring. So there you go.
He would disagree with your title of being a leader. I've heard him personally in speeches say, "I do not want to be your leader. You are free to lead yourselves." So that's a title that Derrick Grayson would find very offensive. He does not want to be a leader at all. He wants to be a representative of what we have to say. I think it's very incumbent upon us to make sure that when we find a man like this who is willing to stand up to the system and stand up to all kinds of attacks, which, there's more than we actually aired tonight that's coming against him, and he's still willing to run. He truly believes. When you find a man like that, you best put your energy behind him,
Well, no, absolutely. And look, I'm not saying leader in the sense that you might think. The fact is that people that are, in a position of power, which he would be in a position of power if he were elected, become leaders. They are not choosing to be leaders, but they become leaders because, the old phrase, leading by example. So that is the way in which I meant it. That he is a leader by example, I believe, because you know what? If our Senate was filled with a bunch of Derrick Graysons, my friend, we would not be in the mess we are in right now.
This is absolutely true. I'm not sure if I am seeing him in the call line, but he might be having technical difficulties. You still there, Derrick? No?
No, it might be just a little audio issue, but go ahead.
That's fine, because we got what we needed from him, which is truth. You heard tonight a guy who is doing everything he can to stand up for us. So support him, So this is Daniel Lewis Crumpton. I'm going to go ahead and sign off for Zen the Far Radio from the 8th Congressional District of Georgia. I was happily joined by Chuck Ochelli in the passenger seat. And Chuck, anything you want to plug?
No, that's all right, Daniel. I mean, you can go to Ochelli.com to keep track of me, but I'll tell you what, Grayson 2016, if you want to find out more information about this man and the wonderful way he is conducting himself. That's all.
And I'll urge you to go to Ochelli.com and get up to date on all the alternative media news that you need to get up to date with, and donate. It doesn't hurt. It ain't gonna hurt you. But it will help us. So listen to AFR, American Freedom Radio, and frequent Ochelli.com. Thanks, Chuck. News and